in just a moment. But he was reassigned to a post with the National Institute of Health, NIH. He's currently, and we'll explain this more in a moment, but he's currently out on sick leave and has not yet started his new position. Yet he found time to go before Congress today. Welcome to John Martin Talks, where we battle ignorance and apathy daily. The growing ignorance of just how special this experiment we call the United States of America is, and the apathy that we can't or won't do anything and everything to save her. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's Friday morning, and it may be the first Friday for some people that they've been back to work in a long time, depending on where they are in the country. You know, the country is opening up, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. If you're out of work, probably not fast enough, but we got a great show for you today. We're going to start with an article about the virus whistleblower. Yes, we have another whistleblower that is testifying before Congress, and he's spewing gloom and doom. So we'll talk about what he had to say on Thursday, now today on Friday morning. And then the next article is about old Uncle Joe. Joe says he's down with reopening, that everybody wants to reopening, and he is all down, I suppose, with President Trump, although he doesn't think President Trump is doing it quite right. So Joe, locked in his basement, is all for reopening, with maybe a catch or two. And then Obama. And I'm not talking about Michelle Obama, although she may be. I'm talking about the one, Barack Obama. He is now good, bad, ugly, somewhere in between. He is at the center of the 2020 presidential race as we speak, and we're going to explain that in just a moment. But we start with an AP story. Virus whistleblower tells lawmakers U.S. lacks vaccine plan. All gloom and doom. Now, let me tell you who this guy is. This guy is, his name is Rick Bright, and Bright is the former director of the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority, called BARDA. In other words, he works for the federal government. He works in the Trump administration, and he is, in effect, an employee/appointee. He was removed from that post back in April and reassigned. So he wasn't fired. There's the way the article portrays. That's why I wanted to explain it from the top. He was not fired. He was reassigned, and he's making a pretty good living still, as you will see in just a moment. But he was reassigned to a post with the National Institute of Health, NIH. He's currently, and we'll explain this more in a moment, but he's currently out on sick leave and has not yet started his new position. Yet he found time to go before Congress today, or yesterday, I should say, and testify to a House committee, of course, run by the Democrats. At least it wasn't in the dungeon like the Trump impeachment hearings. So I wanted to explain who he was before we got too deep in it. Now on with the article. Whistleblower Rick Bright warned on Thursday that the U.S. lacks a plan to produce and fairly distribute a coronavirus vaccine when it becomes available. So here's a guy who's like an expert on vaccines and all things to do with pandemics and pathology and everything else. And he's out here saying that we don't have a plan in place now, right this minute, for distributing a vaccine to all Americans. The fact that we don't have a vaccine, and even the experts are telling us it's going to be a couple of years, 18 months at the least, if we ever get a vaccine. to have one, but he's saying we're not ready. We're not ready. So it's just interesting how they choose to portray this story. The nation, he said, could face the darkest winter in modern history unless leaders act decisively, he told a congressional panel. So the vaccine, as I say, and I've been telling you this for a while, and I'm just going by what the science says. I'm not trying to tell you that I know. I'm just going by the science. I believe in science. And the science I have done research on tells me that at the very least, it's going to take 18 months in order to get a vaccine not only created, which they don't have one yet, to actually go through some level of trials and then be prepared to go out to the public. There's no way you can do it in 6 months. If you had a vaccine today, this is what they don't seem to tell you enough. If you literally found a vaccine today or tomorrow, over the weekend, someone invented one, it would still take months to go from the invention of it to the general public. So the whole concept that we don't have a plan in place is ridiculous from the outset, because we're just now getting to the point where we would even be considering a plan for a non-existent vaccine. And he says all of this. He talks about this vaccine, as I say, is non-existent, and to use the mainstream media, the Democrats' kind of talking point here, they go without evidence, right? Anytime Donald Trump could say, you know, I think the sun's going to come up tomorrow and we'll all be okay. And they go, but he said that without evidence. I mean, here's a guy talking about the lack of a plan and promoting a vaccine without any evidence that it actually is going to happen. It's just insanity. But of course, that's what we should come to expect from the progressive Democrats. That's just what they do. Bright alleges he was ousted from his high-level scientific post after warning the Trump administration to prepare for the pandemic. So he's telling Congress that the reason why he was canned from one position and reassigned to another, he wasn't demoted. They're equal pay and all of that kind of stuff, maybe even more. But he says, let me read this again because this is very important. He says he was ousted from a high-level scientific post after warning the Trump administration to prepare for the pandemic. Now, there's a slight little problem, just a little itty-bitty problem with that. In order to be, quote, a whistleblower, he had to fill out the whistleblower form. Believe it or not, there is a form for whistleblowing. And in that form, he didn't say what he just said was the reason why he was canned. He said that his whistleblower complaint says that he was regulated to a lower position because he would not permit the widespread use of hydroxychloroquine. That's the drugs for malaria that Donald Trump, rightly or wrongly, you could debate it, has promoted. There's been mixed evidence about it, but he would not use the hydroxychloroquine, a malarial drug that Trump touted as being effective in treating patients with COVID-19. So that's what he put in his complaint, not anything to do with being hamstrung with producing or distributing a vaccine. That is what he testified before Congress yesterday, but that is not what was in his complaint. So imagine that. Bright, a vaccine expert who led a biodefense agency in the Department of Health. Think about that. A biodefense agency. That sounds like something made for movies, right? Maybe The Walking Dead. Department of Health and Human Services said the country needs a plan to establish a supply chain for producing tens of millions of doses of vaccine and then allocating and distributing them fairly. Well, a couple of things there. First of all, what vaccine? What vaccine? There is no vaccine. There may never be a vaccine. I hate to break it to you snowflakes out there, and believe me, I hope I'm wrong. I hope they develop a vaccine yesterday. But if you look at the history of vaccines for COVID viruses, guess how many we've produced? This is COVID-19, right? Which implies, I can do the math, that there were 18 other ones. How many vaccines have we made for the other 18? The answer, 0. Not a single one. Keep in mind, there is no vaccine for the flu shot, not by the definition of what you think of a word vaccine as some type of prevention or cure for getting the virus. The flu shot is called the flu shot because it's the best guess they have based on last year's flu. It does not guarantee you in any way, shape, or form that you won't get the flu. In fact, we had one of the worst flu sessions. The only thing that cured the flu this year apparently was COVID-19, because people quit dying from the flu. They quit dying from cancer or getting run over by buses. They're all now dying from COVID-19. So I guess in that sense, the good news is that COVID-19 apparently has cured heart attacks, strokes, and cancer. So, maybe there's a silver lining after all. But he talks about this vaccine as if it's some type of guarantee. And oh my God, we're not prepared for something that doesn't exist, might not ever exist. And if it does come to fruition, it's probably going to be 18 months to 2 years. I think we got a wee little bit of time to get it done. He went on to say his experience so far with antiviral drug that has been found to benefit COVID-19 patients. Keep in mind, an antiviral drug, and by his own words here, that has been found to benefit COVID-19 patients is not a vaccine. It is a treatment. I believe that we are much more likely to get decent types of treatments for people who are infected from COVID-19, and it certainly could make people who aren't having symptoms now have less, or curtail people's symptoms and prevent them from going on ventilators and that. I believe that is a very real possibility and is literally happening in the field as we speak. But a vaccine, I'm not wishing I'm right. I'm just telling you, based on what I've seen, I'm most likely right, is a ways away at best. But his own words here, he's talking about have this antiviral drug has been found to benefit COVID-19 patients, which tells you right there, it's talking about people who already have the disease, the virus. It's not talking about vaccinating them and preventing them from getting it, by his own words. It says patients has not given him much confidence about distribution. So he's saying that we're having problems with distributing these drugs that are showing promise against the virus. And I have no doubt that he's right about that. But that is completely different than what he's talking about with this vaccine. Because think about this. Any antiviral drugs that are being produced literally in the field are happening at the spur of the moment, so to speak. We're talking about people coming to terms with this literally while people are dying from it. So it's not like we've had 2 years to get prepared for this antiviral drugs. They're literally happening as we're speaking and being tested in real time. So the fact that we're having distribution problems for something that's experimental or not known to be ready to treat COVID-19 is perfectly normal. In fact, if it wasn't the case, you'd be wondering what the heck was going on, man. But he said hospital pharmacies have reported problems getting limited supplies. No joke. Because even like the one he doesn't particularly like, the chloroquine, or however you pronounce it, those names kind of run together for me. I mean, it is a drug that is produced primarily for malaria patients and things like that. So, and there's other things it's used to treat. So those people have dibs on the drug to a certain extent. So even the one he wasn't for is already in widespread use, and there could be shortages of it from time to time. I'm just saying the fact that what he's citing as evidence for a problem with the Trump administration is ridiculous. The White House, according to his testimony, said the White House has begun what it calls, or this is what the news article says, the White House has begun what it calls Operation Warp Speed, like Star Trek, man, to quickly produce, distribute, and administer a vaccine once it becomes available. So even the article is telling you that they're working on it. The Trump administration is working on the distribution for a vaccine if and when it happens. As I say, it would only be a problem if somehow they found a miracle cure vaccine prevention like tomorrow. We wouldn't probably be ready for it. But here's the thing you got to keep in mind. I know I'm repeating myself, but if I say it, it bears repeating. That even if they had a vaccine today, before they could actually use it widespread on patients, it would have to go through several months of testing before they implement it, because the cure ultimately might be worse than the disease if we don't do that. So there's only so many shortcuts you can actually take with this stuff. So I look at this and I'm listening to what he's saying. And kind of like the hearing a couple of days ago when Fauci and the guys were up there, what is the purpose of his testimony? Is there any real information? He's a whistleblower. Is there anything that really came out in the testimony yesterday that was like jaw dropping? I don't see it. I mean, it's a show. All of these hearings, even the ones the Republicans did in the Senate, they're all for show. Nothing really new came out of any of this. It is all about covering their behinds politically. And the Democrats are trying to find somebody to basically say all of this is Trump's fault. And quite honestly, the Republicans are a little bit flat-footed on this. They don't really even know what to ask. The only one that seems to have their act together on this is Rand Paul. And I tell you, I've had mixed feelings about Rand Paul over the years, but the last year or so, especially the last few weeks, that guy has proven to be a true American hero on multiple levels. So, you know, I still have some issues with Rand, but overall, I give him a tip of the hat, man. He and his press conference, like Wednesday, was off the chain, man. Appearing before, talking about the Flynn case, appearing before the House Energy and Commerce Committee, Bright said one of his lowest moments came when his repeated efforts to jumpstart U.S. production of respirator masks went nowhere. Now, that is a valid concern. He's not talking about the respirators themselves. He's talking about that I'm sure, but the 95 mask, basically the respiratory mask that prevents you from, you know, it's the best one on the market. There was a shortage of them for healthcare workers. That is absolutely a valid concern. But the reality is, and I'm not trying to take away blame to President Trump. They should be more on top of this. But this has been an ongoing problem throughout administrations that we really have not prepared well from the inevitability of a pandemic. It was inevitable because we've already had minor, when I say minor, I mean lesser versions of pandemics over the course of the last couple of decades and even before that. And I would say that neither the Obama administration nor, quite frankly, the Trump administration has, and states and everything else have really stepped up to the plate on getting ready for pandemics. You know, they were as inevitable as a hurricane, in my opinion. So there's plenty of blame to go around, but to make it all about Donald Trump is disingenuous and unfair. And that's what this whistleblower is trying to do. And that's what these House members are all about. In fact, the chairman, I think his name is Pallone, Pallone, I believe Pallone. He's from New Jersey. The dude's been in Congress for 16 terms. So in other words, 32 dadgum years, the chairman of this committee. Where has he been with the pandemic preparation and everything else under multiple administrations? I mean, he's been there for 32 years. But now they're having a hearing and they're going to fix it. I guess it's a good thing the whistleblower came out, because where was this guy for 32 years? Bright recalled getting emails in late January, that's the whistleblower, from Mike Bowen, an executive at medical supply company called Prestige Ameritech, indicating that our N95, that's the mask I was trying to think of, supply was completely decimated. Now, I'm not saying he's wrong there, but the timeline is very interesting. So he's saying he's talking about this in late January. Now, what happened in late January? Donald Trump was the first leader in the world, both the free world or any part of the world, to actually restrict and take action against COVID-19. Really, he's the only one. He didn't go around welding doors shut like the Chinese did in Wuhan, but he took action. Nobody else did. It shows you the corona timeline that's up there right now. Look at that. And we'll keep it up there for just another minute or so, but I posted on my Facebook. You can watch it. Go back and look at it. Trump was the only elected official really that was firing out a warning shot about COVID-19, coronavirus, and taking action. The rest of it, especially the Democrats, the ones this guy is testifying to, basically, they were telling people as late as late March to just, hey, go down and party like it's 1999, hug a Chinese person if you see him, which I'm not necessarily opposed to, but they were acting like it was no big deal. But this guy is testifying before these people like somehow the fact that Donald Trump, didn't answer this. So let me kind of get this straight, because this is the story they're trying to spin on Donald Trump. So let me get this straight. So Trump, and hear me out on this. These are my words, not the articles, by the way. So Trump, the buffoon, right? I mean, he's portrayed as being the devil, somewhere between being a village idiot and a buffoon by the mainstream media and the Democratic progressive left, the never Trumpers, all together, right? So this guy who doesn't know his fanny from a hole in the ground, as my uncle used to say, is supposed to predict all of this. You can't have it both ways. Either the guy's an idiot or he's not. I think he's a genius, but that's just my story. But this buffoon is supposed to predict all of this while being impeached at the same time. Because keep in mind, when January rolled around and the virus first started kind of popping on the national and international scene, what was happening to Donald Trump? He was a bit busy being impeached by the same yahoos that were telling you to go, just ride the bus, the subway, go down to Chinatown and party, man. I mean, that's what they were saying, right? So he's being impeached. At the same time, China is lying to the world. And Trump is the only one calling China out on anything. Remember that during the 2020 campaign back in 2019, and I've played this video before, I'm not going to play it right now, but Biden was mocking the fact that China would eat our lunch economically. He laughed, China, while he's making billions, his family is off of the Chinese. Yeah, billion, Hunter Biden and all that. How's all that shelf life? That name is coming back up, by the way, but we'll probably talk about that on Monday as it begins to break. But so Biden was mocking Trump for talking about China. And go back to the Obama administration. You can search you can Google it, but as I say, Google is of the devil, so be careful. But Obama, from the White House itself, when he was president, literally said in a speech when he was welcoming China into, I think one of those economic programs that it escapes me at the moment. Sorry about that. Billy Bob may tell me later. But anyway, getting back to the story, Obama literally said that China would help us at the time of a pandemic. In other words, from the White House, Obama literally said that China would help the United States if a pandemic came. Right? Yeah. So all of this is happening at the same time. It's unbelievable, man. And so all of this said would come. So let me get this straight. The buffoon that is Mr. Trump, everything but a child of God, that's being impeached, is supposed to at the same time predict a pandemic and prepare for it that no one knew about, that he took the first action on, called out China when the former president was saying, they'll help us in a pandemic. And the guy who hopes to be the next president, God help us, Biden, is mocking China. All of this is happening at the same time. Well, I know it sounds a bit convoluted, but it makes perfect sense to me. Yeah, it's blame Donald Trump. Whatever it has to be, it's Donald Trump's fault. There's just really no doubt about it. Republican lawmakers on the panel, for the most part, were careful not to attack Bright directly, trying to play it cool. I say Republicans the last few days on these various Senate and then the congressional hearing, I don't know that they know exactly what to do. But Representative Markwayne Mullins, a Republican from Oklahoma, an old Okie, now he had a great line in this of questioning. He slammed Bright for continuing to collect his $285,000 salary while first on sick leave for a spike in blood pressure. So his little old blood pressure went up. He had to take a leave, but he gets paid, and he's switched over to his own vacation as he tries to straighten out his work situation. So he's getting paid $285 large to basically sit on his butt. First he was sick, now he's on vacation, but he has time to testify before Congress. And Mullen pointed this out. Mullen said, "You're too sick to go to work, but you're well enough to come here while getting paid." He said, "I have a hard time understanding that." Well, I understand where you're coming from, Congressman, but it's perfectly understandable. You just, let me ask the Congressman, and I hope it's that he's negative, but have you been tested for TDS, for Trump derangement syndrome? Because if you had Trump derangement syndrome, all of this would make sense. The problem with trying to follow what the Democrats are doing, unless you have Trump derangement syndrome, it doesn't make any sense at all. So that's one of my jobs, me and my sidekick here, Billy Bob Bass, if you're new to the show, This is my psychic sidekick. He keeps me straight. He has a hard job. But he's got a Twitter handle, @BillyBobBass1, and mine is @JohnMartinTalks. But I try to, translate what these crazy Democrats are doing, because I guess I'm partially infected, or at least maybe I'm a carrier of Trump derangement syndrome. I don't know, because I actually believe he's doing a great job. Does that make me crazy? Apparently on Facebook it does sometimes. A federal watchdog agency has found reasonable grounds that Bright was removed from his post as head of the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority after sounding the alarm at the Department of Health and Human Services. Well, of course he was found to be justified. Rats of a feather always flock together. This guy is total left-wing establishment politician. And so it's no surprise to me that they're coming and saying, sure, he's got a case in point to make there, because rats of a feather absolutely flock together. President Donald Trump on Thursday dismissed Bright in a tweet as a disgruntled employee who was not liked or respected by people I spoke to, and who, with his attitude, should no longer be working for our government. And that the article says it's a sentiment some of the president's political allies have expressed about Fauci as well. Well, the way I look at it, and as I say, some of us are sicker than others. Hold on, snowflakes. I'm about to give you one of these melting statements, but if I melt you, you deserve to be melting. President Trump is handling all of this pretty much correctly. Do I agree with everything? No. I don't agree with the shutdown period. I keep wondering where the constitutional authority is to shut us down from the White House to the outhouse or anywhere in between. But overall, President Trump is handling this correctly. I know there is a big push by a lot of conservative people out there, Trump supporters as well, and I get where you're coming from to fire Fauci. But I think Trump is smart to keep the guy there. He needs to make his own decision, the president, and I think he's doing. But if he fired Fauci right now, as justified as that might be, it would just give them more fodder, and I guess they already have enough. I'm not defending Fauci. I guess I'm defending the president, if anything. I think he's trying to play it smart here. And I think overall, how many of us who have criticized President Trump have turned around and said, he was right all along? I'm in that club for sure. As part of his whistleblower complaint, Bright is seeking to be reinstated to his old job at HHS. His employer said it strongly disagrees with his allegations. So the department disagrees with the dude allegation, and that it reassigned him to a high-profile position helping to lead the development of new coronavirus tests and the National Institutes of Health. Think about this, ladies and gentlemen. Only in government, it's the only business I know where you could basically tell the boss that he's, all that and not all that in a bag of chips, that he's everything but a child of God, and expect to get praised. I mean, he gets praised for it, and he gets a lateral move, but it's still got the money, and he's on sick leave, man. His main criticism is a plan to distribute COVID-19 vaccine. Well, let me tell you, with all this going on in the country, including the coronavirus and everything, whether you think President Trump's doing a good job or not, distributing a non-existent vaccine plan is the least of our worries. And let me just say this, and we'll close out and move on to our next story. Assuming that we have a vaccine, and I'll just say it for the sake of conversation, the idea that we're going to have a vaccine, whether it's 18 months, 2 years, and we're just going to automatically have a plan to inject it into everybody in the country is ridiculous from the start. That is impractical and doesn't make any sense at all. When we develop the vaccine, the first thing that should happen is that the people at most risk, like the elderly, the people with what they call it, the comorbidity, all that kind of thing, they should be vaccinated first, period. I mean, I don't see how you could argue with that based on the actual data. And then it should go down into the rest of the population. And there are some people, quite frankly, more than you might think, that they're going to have to be forced to take it. And I'm not advocating that. I'm just saying, based on some of your Facebook posts to me, you're not down with taking a virus. But this whole thing is one big show trying to bring down the president. That's all it's about. It's not based on science unless it's political science. All right, let me check my time. We're doing okay. Let's go on to the next story. This is from Fox News, and it's about Joe Biden, and he's having a little stress. But he is saying he's kind of down with Trump. He's not for being locked down in his basement. He doesn't want the economy to be totally locked down. He wants it to be reopened safely and satisfactorily, or whatever the heck that means. Back to the story. Pushing back at Trump, Biden stresses we all want to reopen. After President Trump claimed in an interview with Fox Business Network that his political critics are pushing a slower reopening of the economy to hurt him politically in November's election, former Vice President Joe Biden countered that we all want to reopen. It's not just President Trump that wants to reopen us. Democrats, of course, Joe Biden, he said, but he wants to do it safely and effectively. So let me ask you, Joe, let's give you the benefit of the doubt. When would be, and I've called out Joe to come on the show, come out the basement, we can do remote. We got apparently better computer people here than you had with all your rallies, because we're smoother, even though we've had our own share of glitches, but nothing. I mean, we look stellar compared to Joe, man. I guess that's not a very good comparison. But let me ask you, Joe, what date would you recommend that we reopen the U.S. economy? I got a sneaking suspicion that your date would be November 4th of 2020, like a day after the election. I just, on a Wednesday. Let's open it up on a Wednesday. I can understand where you're coming from, Joe. I believe that would be his projected date. The Democrats, the progressive leftists, the mainstream media, the never Trumpers, let me tell you, they are going to fight to keep you locked down. Now, science, one side or the other. I'm not saying that it is the right decision to open up. I think every state, sometimes even every county, has different situations. There's no question about that. But the Democrats are not basing keeping us shut down on science at all. At all. If any science, they're basing it on political science, because they want us shut down until November 4th. Trust me on that. Talking about Joe Biden, ask if he thinks his political opponents, Trump, this is Trump, what Trump said. Ask if he thinks his political opponents want him to keep the economy closed due to coronavirus pandemic as the presidential election nears. President Trump said, yeah, I do. I think it's a political thing. And he's absolutely right. He went on to say, the people that want to see the right thing happen, they agree with me. We have to get our country open. Absolutely. He's right about that. He said, if it was up to some people, let's keep it closed for a long time, the Democrats. And as I keep telling you, and this is not a knock, for instance, on Fauci, but I'm telling you, it's one thing to believe in science, and I'm not opposed to that. And I'm not beating Fauci down about this. I have, he is Dr. Doom, as some people call him. There's no question about that. But here's the thing. If you wait for the experts to tell you when it is safe to open the economy, they never will open it. Because it is never, ever safe to leave the cave. It never has been, and it never will be. If we waited on, I guarantee you back in the day, there was one or two cavemen that said, there's a saber-toothed tigers out there. We can't leave. We would never have gotten out of the cave to start with if we didn't have the courage to face the dangers. I've been telling you all along, at the end of the day, we individuals, rugged individuals that this country was founded on, we have to assess our own risk. It just is the way it is. We can't wait till it's perfectly safe. We absolutely can't wait for this whistleblower to come up with the vaccination plan the vaccine doesn't even exist. But he said, this is what President Trump went on to say. If it was up to some people, now let me back up just 1 second. As I read this, I love this paragraph. I can tell you that the TDS people hate this. They think what I'm about to read is the reason why Trump should be not only impeached, but put in a mental institute. But tell me if this is not, if you're a Trump supporter, tell me if this is not why you love the guy. This is what he said. If it was up to some people, let's keep it closed for a long time and watch the United States go down the tubes. He said, it's not gonna happen. Never gonna happen on my watch. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the Donald Trump that I love. I got a man crush on that Donald Trump. That's the guy that I voted for. MAGA again. Donald Trump made America great again. There is really no debate about that. And he's the only one, I think, or certainly the best one to absolutely make it great again. And that's really where we need. But Trump is, he's in Pennsylvania today, basically. And we'll talk about that probably Monday morning when he comes up, because he just got back the other day from Arizona. So Trump is actually out campaigning. He's visiting in Pennsylvania a medical supply company that makes the mask and the gloves and the gowns and all that deal. Of course, they're having almost like a civil war of words, at least, and sometimes actions in Pennsylvania right now. There's like 2 million people, I think, out of work in the state of Pennsylvania. And the governor, as a Democrat, Governor Wolf, wants to keep everything shut down. And a lot of people are getting sick and tired of it. So Biden's response from the safety of his basement. See, Biden is campaigning from his home, and he's got a little disadvantage because Trump's campaigning from his home, and it's a little bit better than Biden's basement. But Biden's response from the safety of his basement, this is what he said. Biden, who is a Pennsylvania native, took aim at Trump, argued that at a time when we should be uniting our country, that's what the Democrats want, they unite our country, right? President Trump is trying to split Pennsylvanians into dueling camps, casting Democrats as doomsayers, hoping to keep America grounded, and Republicans as freedom fighters trying to liberate the economy. I got to tell you, Joe, I couldn't have said it any better myself. That's the most sense right there that Joe Biden has made in a long time. It's the second week in a row that Trump's paid a visit to a key general election swing state. Going to Pennsylvania, was in Arizona a week or so ago. The president, man, he is working it the best he can. The only real question, ladies and gentlemen, is are we who support President Trump, are we working? Me and Billy Bob are trying to work it hard every day. Campaign for Donald Trump like he's 2 votes behind. The next 2 people you see are the 2 that are going to put him over the top, and he will win. All right, we got about 10 more minutes here, and I want to read this article, and this is something that's predictable, but it's taken some twists and turns. It's an AP story about Obama and his insurgence, resurgence, emergence, whatever, into the 2020 race. Obama emerges as central figure in 2020 presidential race. Nearly 8 years after he was last on the ballot, thank God for that, Barack Obama is emerging as a central figure in the 2020 presidential race. Now, was there ever a doubt he was going to be? I mean, he's the most prominent figure in the Democratic Party, hands down. He's eclipsed the Clintons and everything else. He's young. I mean, he's a talented orator. I mean, he's a talented guy. I don't agree with his policies, but you can't take anything away from Obama politically. He's pretty dadgum sharp, and he ran a heck of a campaign. Let's just call it like it is. That's not supporting him. That's just stating fact. So he was always going to be involved in this at some point. He waited forever for Joe to endorse Joe Biden. That's a whole nother story. But also, given the strength or the weakness of the 2020 field, the 20 some odd that were up there, I mean, it was always going to be Obama's going to overshadow any of them. Is there one person on that stage that he wouldn't have overshadowed? Maybe Bernie Sanders, but Bernie never had a chance. He never even was trying to win. He's a sellout. That's a whole nother story. But back to this story. Democrats are eagerly embracing Obama as a political wingman for Joe Biden, who spent 2 terms by his side as vice president. Obama remains the party's most popular figure, particularly with black voters and young Democrats, as Biden's presidential campaign is planning for him to have a highly visible role in the months to come. This is a tricky thing for Biden because even people, is there anybody who's passionate about Joe Biden? I asked that question. I don't believe there is. I haven't met one person who's passionate about Joe Biden. If you are, by the way, just let me know. Send it to me on Facebook, or you can comment on anything on Facebook network. I will respond to you as quickly as I possibly can. We're getting hundreds of comments. I greatly appreciate it. Oh, by the way, if you want to look at our show at other times, archive, you can go to John Martin Talks YouTube page. Check it out. We need more people there. You go to John Martin Talks Facebook page. You can tune into America's Voice News, not only on Facebook. Good morning. How are you? But they've got all kind of ways to stream us on Fire Stick, Roku, Apple TV. Download free apps on both Android and iPhone. We're on Dish Network, Channel 219, and Pluto Network, which people have been saying they've been watching. It's pretty easy. But here's the thing about Obama. He's going to overshadow any of them. He's certainly going to overshadow Biden. So Biden's got a tricky thing about that, man. For President Donald Trump, that means an opportunity to focus, talking about Obama, a spotlight on one of his favorite political foes, and he's aggressively, they say that President Trump has aggressively pushed conspiracy theories about Obama designed to fire up the president's conservative base, taint Biden by association, and distract from the glut of grim health economic news from the coronavirus pandemic. Now, Obama's name has been in the news this past week because of the General Flynn case, right? And we talked a little bit about it yesterday. We'll probably talk more about it on Monday. I haven't really kind of resisted doing a story on it, mainly because there's still so many details to work out that I don't want to get too far ahead of the story. But the unmasking, it appears that everybody and his brother that was in the administration of the Obama administration were unmasking or requested to unmask General Flynn. So it's very clear to me that there is this big conspiracy that started in the White House, not only to help Hillary Clinton during the campaign, but to hamstring ultimately Donald Trump should he win, which is exactly what the Obama administration did. There's really very little debate about that. But is it a conspiracy theory or is it just a fact? Just because it's a conspiracy doesn't mean it isn't true. You're not paranoid that you can be paranoid and they can still be out to get you, right? Oh, by the way, if you hadn't heard, there is a Paranoids Anonymous meeting out there. They just won't tell us where they meet. But unmasking of General Flynn, it's pretty obvious it's a who's who of the Obama administration, including Smoking Joe, Sleepy Joe Biden. Now, is it going to bring them down? I know everybody wants to see the perp walk, and I'm with you, man. I want to see them with the coats over the head, perp walking and everything else. And I'm all about Attorney General Barr and this Durham fella and everything else. And I'm hoping that you're right. I see a lot of people chiming in, telling me, oh, they're going to get their comeuppance. Well, first of all, I think the only way they're ever going to get any comeuppance, if they are, is if Donald Trump is reelected. Because the minute he's not, all that stuff goes away. I just don't see any other way around it. But here's the big problem why I tell you all the time, and let me back up. I'm with you. I want to see this perp walk happen, but I wouldn't be doing my job here or being true to myself if I didn't tell you what I really think. And that is, don't hold your breath. I'm not criticizing Barr. I'm not criticizing Durham. I'm not criticizing, the Republicans. But let me just tell you, the reason I say that is because of the swamp. The swamp is deep and smelly. President Trump is trying to drain it. There's no question about it. He hasn't drained it yet. He is beginning to drain it. It seems to be filling back up again. But the reason I'm pessimistic, if you want to call it that, about anybody actually being prosecuted, let alone thrown in jail, is because, just like I said, rats of a feather flock together. The rats don't like to convict the rats. Because, see, at the end of the day, and I say this about Republicans too, they're trying to outdistance President Trump. They're hoping that he is, as the Brits say, a one-off. That he either gets defeated in 2020, God help us if that happens, or he's done in 2024 and nothing like him will ever come again. That's what all of this is about. And the rats don't like to convict the rats. The only thing I think that immediate could come positive out of all this unmasking and Obamagate and everything else is it might actually hamstring Obama from trying to help Joe Biden. That, I think, is a very real possibility. Let me check my time. Got a few more minutes left. Just want to cover a couple of more things on this story. As Biden looks to Obama for personal validation, he is running to restore some of the former president's legacy, which has been systematically dismantled by Trump. The current president is running in part to finish the job. Dismantling me. I can see Donald Trump, man. And I got a meme, I think, that shows you dismantling Obama, man. It's pretty cool. Despite there being, I love this. I keep bringing this up to you all the time. The standard. There's no double standard. There's one standard for conservatives. Donald Trump, supporters of him, no standard for the progressive left. They do whatever they want. But so they always talk about no evidence. Despite there being no evidence of wrongdoing by Obama, Biden, or other administration officials, Trump is eagerly pushing the notion of unspecified crime, branding it Obamagate. So this is rich now. They're saying there's no evidence, right? They tried to bring Donald Trump. They impeached Donald Trump with no evidence. They put on the Russian fiasco with no evidence. If you haven't seen this video before, you need to see it. It's only a few seconds, 45 seconds long or whatever. This is Barack Obama when he was president talking to the prime minister of Russia. And in it, he talks about, hey, give this message to Vladimir Putin. Listen to this. There is more evidence in this little snippet than there was in the entire Mueller investigation.
My last space for you. Yeah. After my election, I have more flexibility. Yeah, I understand. I transmit this information to Vladimir and I stand with him.
In case you couldn't hear it, go back and listen to it again. He says, "Yeah, I'll have more, availability to help you after I get reelected." Basically, make sure you tell Vlad. There's more evidence in that clip right there than the entire investigation into Trump, the impeachment, the Mueller investigation, everything. More evidence there, and they spent tens of millions of dollars doing that. So if they're not indicting Obama, I don't expect they're going to indict the rest of these people. Maybe it will hamstring President Obama from actually helping Joe Biden. I hope you've enjoyed the show as much as I've enjoyed bringing it to you. Please go directly to John Martin Talks Facebook page, like it, and share it with others. I'll pray for your family. You pray for mine. Have a great weekend. I'm going fishing. We've reopened. I'm going fishing. But above all else, like I say each and every day, from my heart, from my family to yours, have a blessed day.